Our ocean innovator today is a cross between an engineer and a social entrepreneur. He has a passion for making the world a better place. He's now tackling Western Australia's waste plastic problem through GreenBatch. He has been named United Nations Junior Chamber International Top 10 Most Outstanding Young People of the World, Western Australia Young Australian of the Year, and Australia's Top 30 Most Innovative Engineer. Everyone, please welcome Darren Lomman, founder of GreenBatch.
Good morning. Thank you for having us on your show.
So let's get started. Darren, can you tell us more about your organization?
Yeah, for me, this all started when I heard the 2050 more plastic in the ocean than fish quote, and started looking about what was going on around this. Was it just some crazy statistics some environmentalists made up, or was there some foundation to it? And discovered that stat actually came out of research that had been presented at the World Economic Forum. I'm like, wow, if this is kind of real, this is a crazy big problem that we need to do something about. And started doing some research into the plastic scenario and what was going on. And long story short, I discovered that here in Western Australia, not a single bit of plastic we'd put in a recycling bin had ever been reprocessed here. Instead, it was all put on ships and sent off to China, where it magically disappears. And when you look at the plastics in the ocean, 95% of it's coming from 10 rivers in the world, and 8 of those surround China, which is the country where we as Australians are sending our plastic. So I thought, there's something wrong here and we need to do something about it.
That's pretty scary. So why did you in fact create GreenBatch?
Yeah, well, at the time when I heard that quote, my daughter was 2 years of age and she was going to be exactly my age in 2050. And I was teaching her how to recycle, what rubbish to put into the recycling bin, the landfill bin. And when I discovered none of the plastic we were putting in our recycling bin was actually being reprocessed, I thought that was an absolute disgrace. Like, our kids are expecting us adults to be doing the responsible thing with our waste. And started having meetings with government, recycling industries, supermarkets, beverage companies, and everyone in the value chain, and no one wanted to take responsibility. It was always the person before me's responsibility or the person after me, and everyone was just handballing the problem around. And this is not on. I'll put up my hand, I'll take responsibility, and I'll try to do something about this. And that's what GreenBatch came about. And really, in terms of how I could use my kind of engineering and entrepreneurship to tackle this plastics ocean was not actually to deal with the plastic in the ocean, but turn off that tap, stop the plastic going into the ocean in the first place. And for that, we have no reprocessing facilities. There's nowhere for our waste plastic to actually go to in WA. So by creating a reprocessing facility, we can actually start mopping up all that plastic that is actually captured in our recycling system, reprocess it, and turn it back into a new product, which not only has the impact of stopping plastic ending up in our environment, it also has the impact of preventing new virgin plastic being created as well. So it's a bit of a double whammy solution.
So can you tell us, how do your actions take shape?
Yeah, so there's a whole chain that has to happen here. This is a circular economy, and we need all the players to be involved together. We've launched the foundation, GreenBatch Foundation, which is really aimed at the consumers and around education. We've got a big schools program where we're educating kids about plastic and plastics in the ocean. And plastic in and of itself is not actually an evil thing. Like, plastic's a really useful material if we do the right thing with it, if we capture it, reprocess it, put in the right bins, and give it that continuous circular kind of loop. So just trying to educate our next generation around that. And then we've got the campaign on the other side to actually build the reprocessing facilities as well, which involves attracting the private investment, government support. And then the next chain is then working with the manufacturers and industry to actually start using recycled plastic in their manufacturing, rather than just going for the easy, we'll just dig up some more fossil fuels out of the ground and turn into plastic and make virgin kind of products. So it's really looking at the whole cycle, because at the end of the day, if we only solve one part of it, it's not going to solve this challenge.
And who are the members of your foundation?
So within the foundation, we've got a whole heap of, I guess, stakeholders, and we're getting support through really the foundation's been kids. The young youth have been really driving this campaign, getting their schools involved. But then it's grown. We've now got the parents and the public getting involved and helping collect kind of plastic. And that has now grown into events, event organizers, stadiums, hospitals, businesses getting involved. Slowly, government's kind of getting behind this. So the membership kind of and support base is kind of growing over time. Still a few more stakeholders to get on board. But yeah, compared to where we started a couple of years ago, it's been a phenomenal journey. We've got 10,000 followers kind of backing what is effectively a waste management company, which should be an unsexy kind of thing, but the public kind of cares about this and wants to see solutions behind this.
Fantastic. So what are your needs, guys? How can we help you?
Yeah, there's a couple of things we can all do. First of all, if you think about the typical waste hierarchy, is reducing our plastic use in the first place. If you're at the shop, do you need to go and put your bananas into another plastic bag? Like, just do away with that, or get a reusable produce bag, or whatever else. That's always going to be the number one. Let's get rid of the unnecessary plastics. Number two is then make sure the plastic that we kind of do utilize is actually properly kind of recycled. We put it in the right recycling bin and all that sort of stuff. And we don't put other stuff in our recycling bin that's not recyclable. We have a big challenge in the recycling world around contamination, where up to 30% of a regular recycling bin is stuff that shouldn't be in there. Nappies, grass clippings, whatever. People's regular landfill bin is full, so they just put it into their recycling bin, which causes a lot of problems for the general recycling kind of industry. We on a GreenBatch front, we are kind of, scale was a word Heidi kind of mentioned. GreenBatch started very small. I started my shed at home with an office paper shredder and a pair of scissors. And I was literally like hand removing labels and lids, cutting the tops and bottoms off bottles, slicing and then feeding them into a paper shredder. And then I started bringing in schools to get involved. And all of a sudden I had 5 schools, which is like 5,000 kids bringing me plastic. And I was sitting there shredding it in a paper shredder. So using my kind of engineering and some open source precious plastics kind of models, we built a slightly bigger shredder with a slightly bigger motor than what you find in the paper shredder, and we could shred the whole bottle. And that was amazing, because that went from doing 500 grams an hour to about 5 kilograms an hour, 10-fold increase. But then as we scaled, we got 20 schools on board, and all of a sudden 20,000 kids were bringing us plastic, and that little one bottle at a time was going too slow. So we got a bigger shredder, which was thanks to a little grant we got from our state government, and that meant we could start just constantly funneling them in, and we went from 5 kilos an hour to 50 kilos an hour, which was another 10-fold growth. But then we've now got 100 schools, businesses, stadiums, and all sorts of stuff. So that 50 kilos an hour just ain't cutting it anymore. So we've just scaled to the next growth, which is 500 kilos an hour, which is enabling us to do an awful lot more. And that also has automatic label removal, automatic lid removal, which is amazing. But our next growth is the one we're working on, is to go from 500 kilos an hour to 5,000 kilos an hour. If we hit that goal, that enables us to take in every single bit of PET and HDPE collected across Western Australia. So that our next challenge is just capital. That costs money to buy this machinery. And our government right now has actually just this week announced some pretty major funding across Australia, $190 million for plastic reprocessing, which is coming off the China national sword. China's banned the import of plastic, which then countries started moving their plastic to China, to Malaysia and Indonesia. So our government has actually brought in a ban on exporting plastic anywhere, which is great. And a lot of this has come from that the citizen kind of noise, the unhappiness with the fact we were just exporting our waste and dumping it on other countries. So all this movement, the years of talking, like Scott Morrison was talking about his 16-year-old daughter nagging him about those single-use plastic was one of the reasons why he brought in this policy. So the public is actually making some change in this by being unsatisfied with what's going on and making noise about it. So yeah, our next challenge, we've got to raise 1/3 of the capital, and then the federal government and state governments are going to back it, which is huge right now. So a $15 million plant is only $5 million. So we've got 40 days to raise that capital, and then we can go that next step to doing all of WA's PET and HDPE, which is exciting because that takes us from being equal last, doing 0 reprocessing, to equal first, doing 100%. So that's our little mission right now, and it's all come from people just being noisy. We live in a democratic society, and the public have spoken, and we're not happy with this anymore, and we're getting change, which is exciting.
That's very impressive. So how does your solution work? And are there any loss during the recycling process?
Well, I guess the analogy of our solution when we're looking at oceans, if you were to come home and see your bathroom floor flooded with water, and you see your plug is in your basin and the faucet is running water, the first thing you do is turn off the tap. You stop the flow of that kind of water. That's kind of what we're doing with plastic. We've got the issue of our plastic flooding our floor or our oceans, and we need to turn off that tap. What we do is we've got the collection network to collect up that plastic. We put it through a range of kind of processes that help effectively decontaminate it, wash it, remove labels and lids, separate them into the different streams, shred them down, and then turn them into a nice clean feedstock that is ready to be manufactured again. A bottle, once it gets put into a recycling bin, isn't ready to be manufactured. There's a number of steps to go through between putting it in a bin and a new manufacturer making a product out of it. And that's what we're specializing in. We're not the end manufacturer. We have no desire to make a whole range of new products, bottles, bins, or whatever it is. There's plenty of people out there already doing it. What we want to do is actually mop up that plastics that's already there, do the work and effort that's required to convert it into something that those manufacturers can go, instead of buying a ton of virgin plastic, they can use a ton of recycled plastic. And it's not actually, what we're doing is not revolutionary. Like, people have been doing recycling for decades around the world. We're not inventing the machine. I'm an engineer, but I haven't had to invent the process. I've just had to understand it and pick good vendors that supply the equipment, and then just raise the capital and do it. There is, despite the title Ocean Innovators, I'm not an innovator. I'm just doing what should have been done decades ago. It's just ludicrous that in 2020, our reprocessing line out the back of my factory is the very first one in Western Australia. Like, what the hell previous generations were you doing? So I don't feel like I'm innovating. I feel like I'm back in the 1970s doing what should have been done back then.
So anybody can be an innovator.
Well, it's just, when I found out there was no reprocessing happening, I was just like, this is just bloody wrong. And someone just has to take the time and effort to pull together all the pieces of puzzle. Someone's just got to take responsibility. It's like, the conversations I'm having are not really innovative. I don't know. I struggle with innovative. It's just taking responsibility. And we can all do it. And I was kind of in an interesting position where I handed over my last social enterprise, and I was looking for my next project. I sold my house to give myself kind of a couple of years window to really deep dive into a project. And I happened to stumble into that 2050 plastics in the ocean one, and went, all right, what can I do about it? And when I started doing the research, the solution was actually really, really easy. It's now the challenging bit is actually pulling together all the stakeholders, the funding, the government, all those people who, it's economics, it's politics. That's we need people that are good at pulling that stuff together. The engineering bit, that's a piece of cake. We've got so many mining and resource engineers that can design a process plant. It's all the social engineering and everything else that comes around this. That's the tricky bit, if you ask me.
So what plastics are you able to recycle and what cannot be recycled?
Yeah, so we started off focusing on PET, which is in the little triangles on your plastic bottles and that sort of stuff. It's the number one. That PET is soft drink bottles, water bottles, but it's also strawberry punnets, it's bakery. There's thousands of products that are number one. So that can get turned into a couple of things. It can eventually a bottle can be turned back into a bottle. And if you've got the right engineering processes, you can actually maintain the quality of plastic in there. So that can be done indefinitely over and over again without losing any quality. It's 100% recyclable over and over again. It can also be turned into polyester, clothing, and all that sort of stuff. So again, rather than using virgin plastics to make something that's already been made, it can come from our waste. We have since evolved into doing number twos, which is HDPE, which is the most common one is your milk bottles, that kind of milky white color plastic. But it's also your bleach bottles, your shampoo bottles, and another couple of thousand products that are in those kind of packaging. That again can be, the milk bottle can be turned back into a milk bottle. That's the holy grail of circular economy and recycling. Some technical challenges there and requires a bit more capital because of food grade and lots of stuff. But it can be turned into injection molded or extruded products. So you're piping underground that takes your sewage down to the water treatment plant. That plastic does not need to be brand new virgin plastic. It can be made out of recycled HDPE. Your wheelie bin at home is made out of HDPE. It's ludicrous to make a bin out of virgin plastic. Let's make that out of recycled plastic. Really, anything that's made out of HDPE can be made out of recycled HDPE. Anything made out of PET can be made out of recycled PET. We're starting now to have some conversations around polypropylene. Most of these plastics are recyclable, but the challenge is getting enough volume, getting people to buy it, and some technology in there. There is some challenges in there though, like your multi-layer packaging, where you've got, for example, your long life soup pouch, which has got an aluminium layer, a plastic layer, and all that sort of stuff, which has been designed around minimizing food waste and preserving. There's a lot of engineering reasons why it's done that, but it's made recycling harder. So there is a lot of talk now in the plastics manufacturing world about kind of undoing some of their innovations to ensure there is a recyclability about it. It's not an overnight kind of thing. Like, one of the big challenges we've got is PVC. There's not much food packaging left in PVC except for cordial bottles. That's one of the only things left in PVC packaging. And it's like, well, why don't they just make cordial bottles out of PET and recycle all the other PET? And that's just, it's economics, it's commercial, and getting the public kind of swaying. Like, I remember having a conversation with a cordial company, and when we asked them, why don't you switch? And their response was, oh, the public prefers the feel of PVC. I'm like, yeah, do they really? I've never seen anyone go up to a supermarket and stroke a bottle of cordial and go, oh, I like how that feels, I'm going to buy that. Like, come on, like, yeah. So there's commercialities that are in this. Public pressure can say a lot, but yeah. So there are some plastics that we just don't have the facilities, like your Tetra Paks. There's, on their packaging, they say it's recyclable, but there's no recycling facility for those. So if there's no recycling facilities, are they recyclable? And there's no real mandate around labeling something as recyclable. There's no one monitoring what companies are saying, which is interesting. So there is definitely still some challenges around there as to products that are not recyclable yet. But even the most recyclable, like your plain old beverage bottle, which is 100% recyclable, is not being recycled in WA and many other places across Australia and the world.
So what framework needs to be in place to support a sustainable future for our oceans?
Yeah, it's interesting having conversations with our government around this. There is some stuff coming in which has actually been really good. For example, the banning of exporting our waste. That is a big first step towards taking responsibility, because no longer it's not in my backyard, not my problem kind of attitude. It has to change, because now that plastic is stuck, trapped in Australia. So every bit of virgin plastic we bring in, we ain't sending it out anymore. So that has created a real focus on the processing and handling of that collected plastic. And our government has actually backed that with some funding this week, which is fantastic. There is also now some guidelines through the Australian Packaging Covenant that by 2025, 100% of our packaging needs to be recyclable. And that's an interesting definition, recyclable versus recycled, and is there facilities? And I hope they shift that definition to there has to be a facility for it to be defined as recyclable. But they've also added in there now that packaging needs to contain at least 30% recycled content. So that now starts forcing the manufacturers to start looking for feedstock or material that comes from recycled sources. And if that doesn't exist, they're going to have to invest in that, or someone that's going to create market driver around creating those facilities. Once there's those facilities, that creates market drivers around the collection, which creates market drivers around education. So there is stuff kind of happening now. However, like this 2025 goals, they're really just targets. It's not legislated. It's not enforced. Like if we enforce that, let's see how quickly these corporate entities that have backed by big balance sheets can move. They could if we decided to. Our government just needs to be a little bit more strict and enforcing of these rather than, oh, wouldn't it be nice if? Because I don't know if that's going to drive us. Like, so, yeah.
And how do we educate people to shift to new behaviors?
That's a really interesting question. I guess there's probably 3 different kind of audiences here. Like we've got like our hardcore followers that absolutely are fully green. They're aware about plastic. They're minimizing their plastic. They're doing everything they can. They're looking at whether that plastic comes from a recycled source, all that sort of stuff. They're already educated. They're going out. They're searching. They're trying to find the information that's out there. They're already kind of educated. That's 20%. And then you've got this kind of 60% middle who's not really thinking about waste. They just go in the shops, buying their things. It's about convenience, about price. That is probably where the real opportunity is to educate in that kind of space. And then you've got your last kind of 20%, which are, they may know what's going on. They just don't care. Their bin's full. They just put it in the recycling bin, whatever. Like, it's not my problem. Someone else's. Like, I'm just going for the cheap option, whatever. That's a really challenging market to kind of educate because they can know all the information. They're just going to be complacent and go on life as usual because they're busy doing other things. There have been examples of, like, in terms of recycling, countries around the world, they'll do a bin audit. And if you've put non-recyclable stuff in your recycling bin, you'll get a $300 fine. Now, I guarantee you as a consumer, if you get a $300 fine for putting some grass clippings in your recycling bin, you're probably going to think twice about doing it next time. Whereas we don't really have that here in Western Australia. I'm not sure we've got that harder enforcement anywhere around the world. Other places, they, instead of just paying your flat rates for recycling, they charge per kilogram. They have little scales on the truck, and the more waste you generate, the more you pay. All of a sudden, as Heidi was saying about that money in your wallet, if you're now being charged per kilogram of waste, you're going to be thinking about reducing your waste. So there's some financial things that can be done that help with the education. So yeah, we kind of touched on the making noise and having voices heard. I've just had a look at both the GreenBatch and Tangaroa Facebook page. We've both got about 12,000 followers out of 26 million people in Australia. Anyone watching this, get on, join our pages and follow us. And when you see posts, share it, get it out there, get the word of the great work. Heidi talked about that, not the name and shame, but the name and fame. Like, anyone's doing great work. When the likes of a supermarket actually makes a positive change, don't just attack them for all the bad stuff. Actually give them some praise. People respond well to praise, and when they criticism, they just curl up and hide. So if you see something good out there, let's get some positivity going on. If you see great organisations like Darren, let's get on, support their work, share it with all your friends. Let's try boost it from 12,000 to 20,000 in the next month. Like it's, and then all of a sudden you start seeing the groundswell of public support, then politicians take more notice. And that's something we can all do in the next 30 seconds that costs us absolutely nothing.
So Darren, what is your 5-second slogan message you would like to give to our audience today?
It's something someone else has said, I can't take it, but there is no planet B. This is our one and only planet, and we need to take responsibility for it right now.
And there we go. That was Ocean Innovators release number 2, celebrating 10 years to achieve United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Don't forget to press the bell button to subscribe, and we will see you next time.